afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for attending our workshop today. I'd like to welcome you to the third and final lesson of our Doc to Help Summer School. I'm Nicky Bleiel, and I'm pleased to be your host today. Today we'll be talking about single sourcing for print, mobile, and web. Now, single sourcing, of course, is nothing new, but with the addition of mobile and web outputs, there are a few additional tips and tricks I'd like to share, as well as give you an overview of how to do some of these things in Doc to Help. Now, I always like to let folks know a little bit about me before we get started. So this is a picture of me on a good hair day. I've been a technical communicator for over 19 years, and some of my other qualifications are there. So you could check out my website later if you want to learn more. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, I have our syllabus displayed. We're going to go through a quick overview of single sourcing, and then some fun facts about Mobile and EPUB, and then we're going to go through our tips and best practices. So that's where we'll do our exercises. The housekeeping, this workshop is 90 minutes, and we're going to work straight through. If you have any questions, please use the little hands up feature in GoToMeeting, or you could wait till the end and we could do all the questions then. If I see your hand up, I may not answer it immediately, but wait for a logical break. So I'm going to try to make sure to answer everything at some point. We will email you these slides after the workshop so that you'll have all the information in the slides and the links. You already should have the workbook. Here's what the workbook looks like. So you should have that, and we're going to be doing exercises in the workbook. And follow along. And in addition to sending you the slides after this workshop, we're also going to, we're recording this class right now, and we're going to post it to YouTube also. So since it is a workshop, we do have hands-on exercises, and to do them, you need to have Doc to Help installed. Now, if you haven't installed it, that's okay. You could just watch me do the exercises, but you know, after that, please go to doctohelp.com and download the software so that you could try out the exercises also. I will admit to having a little bit of a head cold today, so if you hear me go silent every so often, that's just me putting the phone on mute so I could sneeze. So don't think I laughed, I'm just sneezing. And I do have some conceptual information to go over first. We're going to just do an overview of single sourcing because we have people in this class at a lot of different levels. Some people are experienced Doc to Help users. Some people have never used it. So I do want to do a little bit of overview, but we'll get to the hands-on stuff soon enough. And I'll show you a lot of customizations for, you know, specifically my examples are Mobile and EPUB. But all the outputs are customizable, and the same rules will apply. Okay, the summer school hashtag. We actually have a hashtag, D2H Summer School. If you tweet about Doc to Help during or after the class, we're going to put your name in a hat for some cool prizes. One of the prizes we have is an electronic version of our 3-part training series. It's a $150 value. And then also something that's a $900 value is one seat in our comprehensive training class. So this is a 4-day training class where you would get introductory, intermediate, and advanced training. So please say nice things using the D2H Summer School hashtag. Now, resources. We have a variety of, we want people to be successful with Doc to Help, so we have a lot of resources to get you up and running. Everything but the training classes are free, and there are additional resources on the start page of Doc to Help. So we have a number of videos on YouTube, over 20 or so. The videos I called out in this chart are particularly good getting started ones right over here. We have a tutorial that's called Doc to Help in 5 lunches that you might really like. It's just 5 lessons you could do over a lunch hour. And this blog post, Doc to Help's Learning Library, has a nice breakdown of all of our different resources. So you might want to check out that blog post, Doc to Help's Learning Library. Now, I know that some of you might be familiar with Doc2Help, but for those that are not, I'd like to start with a quick overview, specifically what outputs you can single source to and how Doc2Help does it, so a quick overview of single sourcing. Let's start with what you could publish. With Doc2Help, you can single source to 12 outputs. I put a bunch of the outputs in the online help column, a few in the manuals column, and 3 of them I have in the land in between. So really quickly, online help. The first one is HTML help. It's the familiar chunk file. It's a format for Microsoft. A lot of us produce compiled HTML help. Browser-based help, in Doc2Help we call that net help, and that's uncompiled HTML help that is, served up on a browser. Mobile help, it's also uncompiled and viewed on a browser. Eclipse help is help that is used in the Eclipse development environment from IBM. Java help is help for pure Java applications. Win help is the original online help format from Microsoft, and a lot of us are still creating Win help also. Microsoft Help Viewer integrates with Visual Studio 2010 and above. So if you're creating help that needs to integrate with Visual Studio, Microsoft Help Viewer is great. And Microsoft Help 2.0 integrates with earlier versions of Visual Studio 2002 through 2008. Now manuals, which are still quite popular, and lots of us are still making manuals. With Doc2Help, you could create 2 different types of Word versions, of course, .doc and .docx, PDF, to make those into a PDF version. And then the ones that sit in between, you could create EPUBs with Doc2Help. And those are easy, and of course EPUBs can be read in e-readers, Nooks and things like that. Of course, Kindles read Mobi. It's easy enough to take the EPUB output that you make with Doc2Help and use something like Calibre to convert it to Mobi. And then also with Doc2Help, these aren't targets, so to speak, but they are other ways that you can distribute your help. You can drop a project into a SharePoint document library or into a SharePoint wiki page library. So those are 2 other outputs. And there is a video called All About Doc2Help Outputs that you can watch and learn more about all of these different outputs. Now, I know I don't need to sell you all on single sourcing because you wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in that subject, but I just wanted to note that our deliverable sets have been, very static for quite a few years now. But Mobile and EPUB have been added in quick succession to our deliverable set and are presenting some new challenges, but ones that are pretty cool. I find it pretty exciting. And, now we can single source to the web, desktop, EPUB, mobile help, and all of these things, interestingly enough, can be read on mobile devices. So these things exist in their own little worlds, desktop, mobile device, e-reader, but they can all be read on different mobile devices anyway, so there's really no one way that folks are looking at this stuff anymore. But not only could we single source to these new outputs successfully, so that's cool, but we can keep creating all the stuff that we need to create. We still need to create browser-based help. We still need to create chunks, manuals, and all these other outputs. So it's nice that you can still single source to all the stuff we've been doing, but also add on a few new things like mobile and EPUB. This particular slide illustrates one project that's been single sourced to 5 different deliverables. So net help, EPUB, manuals, mobile, and HTML help. I do see that there are some questions. I will answer them. When you guys are doing the first exercise, I will jump in and answer those questions. Okay. Now, customizing each output, of course, with Doc2Help, each of your outputs can be customized, but they don't have to be. You could just use the templates and themes that come with it right out of the box. So you can do as little or as much customization as you prefer. The difference between themes and templates in a nutshell is that templates control the content and themes generally control the skin. So we have some videos on YouTube that explain how to customize themes and templates, so you might want to take a look at those because we really won't be covering that too much today. We'll touch on themes a little bit. NetHelp and Mobile Help have the most customizable themes. The others are customizable also. It's just that NetHelp and Mobile have the ones that you could do the most with. Now, single sourcing by the output. Now, in Doc2Help, you can author your content in Word docs or in Doc2Help's built-in HTML5 editor, which we just call the content editor. But depending on what output you choose, Doc2Help does different things automatically. So I just want to explain those really quickly. First of all, in online help and manuals, in both of them, whatever your output, Doc2Help creates a logical table of contents and it creates an index. So that goes across the board. In online help, Doc2Help breaks everything up into topics. It creates automatic links to subtopics. I'll show you that later, how subtopic links work. We have an exercise about that. It creates automatic links to glossary definitions. So that's a really cool feature that's only in online help. It has search, of course, has a robust search. Now in manuals, Doc2Help creates the front matter for you, the front cover and the TOC. It converts links to cross-references. So of course links will say, instead of it just being a hyperlink, it'll say, you know, this topic on page whatever, does that automatically. And it adds footers. And I always like to point that out. It's a small point, but a lot of folks think that you'll create all kinds of online help content, but for manuals, you still need to do it, you know, manually, so to speak, insert the front matter and things like that. You don't. All of them can be built right out of the box. We're going to talk for a second about, I often get the question, how does Doc2Help create help topics from Word documents? Now, just want to give you a little background on this. First of all, if you use our content editor, which is built in, you're going to generally create single topic documents. So those are all going to be individual topics, not an issue. Now, if you have existing Word documents, Doc2Help, and even new ones, shouldn't specify that. Any kind of Word document, if you write it with many topics in it, what Doc2Help does is analyze the heading styles and then breaks your content into topics based on those styles. So it looks for heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 styles, etc., and breaks your content up into topics based on those styles. So that's why you could leave your Word documents exactly as they are and not change them and still create online help with Doc2Help. Now, I do have a visual of how this transformation works. Here's a typical Word document from one of our samples. It's about Pittsburgh Sports. Pittsburgh Sports is a heading 1, football, baseball, and hockey are heading 2s. So when Doc2Help breaks this up into topics, the table of contents logically is broken into Pittsburgh Sports as a book with football, baseball, hockey underneath. And then when you look at our topics pane where all the topics are displayed, and you could do a lot more, but one of the core things it does is actually show you what all your topics are. Here they all are, Pittsburgh Sports, football, baseball, hockey. So that's how Doc2Help transforms your Word documents. Now, are your Word documents affected? No, they're not. Doc2Help does not change them in any way. They remain Word documents that anyone can open in Word. But if you do make a change to your Word document in your project, save it, and then do a build, the change will be incorporated into the target, obviously, because you want to be able to keep updating your content, so you are not stopped from doing that. So that is just a quick overview there, and we're going to jump right into getting started with Doc2Help. Now, this is a quick overview of how you get started. First of all, Doc2Help has a Getting Started wizard right within it that you can use to start a new project, open an existing project. If you look over here, open a sample. We're going to use one of our included sample projects today to work through our exercises. And also you could convert projects using the Getting Started wizard. And this wizard only has a few steps, and you could also import existing Word documents using the Getting Started wizard. So it's really handy. After you create a project, I just like to point out it's really only 3 steps to then end up with with an output. First, you select the target using our Select Target drop-down. You click the Build button and build it, and then you view it. So it's only 3 steps. On this slide, I'm actually showing you, this is one project, the manual output, which is right here, NetHealth, which is our browser-based target, and HTML help at Chum. So it's really only 3 steps once you get your project created. Okay, the newest outputs. Let's dive into single sourcing by talking about these new outputs, Mobile and EPUB. I have some background information about them, and also we're going to look at some tips and tricks. Okay, the generic mobile persona. I actually have a link to some articles about this. So this did come from articles and different research I've done. Now, first of all, folks on mobile devices, they're often distracted. They're using one hand. They fat finger things because we're trying to tap a little device with one hand, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes. We use the device in different situations. Sometimes we're at a park. Sometimes we're at our desk. Hopefully we're not driving. Shouldn't be doing that, but we're just all over the place. And we want fast load times. So we're very impatient when we're on our mobile device. So this is a good place to start when we're doing the personas for our product or our project that we're working on. But you can make it more specific with different scenarios. For example, if the users of your product are service people that are out in the field, they aren't necessarily distracted or in a hurry. They need to do their job, so they may not be quite as impatient as some users. We really could talk about mobile for quite a while, and we will talk about it more today. But if you're interested in more information about mobile trends, information about screen resolution, viewports, things like that, I did a talk at TCOM in Germany last year, and I have the link at the end of the slides here today. So you might want to take a look at those slides to get that sort of really deep dive information about mobile. Now, some good mobile best practices. Some of the best practice information comes from the mobile web world. So this makes sense because mobile help is browser-based, so it has a lot in common with a website. It has a TOC, it has navigation and search, which, by the way, I always like to point out to people, so does online help. I mean, online help is basically a website. It just looks a little bit different sometimes, but online help has a table of contents and navigation and search, so help is quite web-like. Now, good best practices are, keep it simple and prioritize content, use vertical navigation, be concise. That's just a good best practice in general, to keep your content concise. Simplify your navigation, and be thumb-friendly. We talked about fat fingering, and these 2 articles I've listed here have a lot of good tips and best practices. Now, a little bit about DocToHelp's mobile output. First of all, it's HTML-based. Sorry, HTML5-based. It uses 2 web technologies. It uses jQuery and jQuery Mobile, so that it's browser and device independent. It's also Section 508 compliant. And it's really easy to build and deploy. All you really need to do is copy the files to your web server. And we will build mobile outputs a little bit later and take a look at that. There is also a help topic in DocToHelp that goes through, that explains all of DocToHelp's outputs. And on that same chart, it also tells you exactly what you need to deploy for each output. So that kind of makes it handy for you to know, not only, making the choice of what you want to build, but also how to deploy it. Now, to talk about EPUB for a second. Now, here are some quick EPUB facts. First of all, they're a collection of XHTML, XML, CSS, and media files. They're basically in a zip archive. So the file extension is .epub, but if you replace that .epub with .zip, you can look at all the files that are inside of the EPUB. Now, Kindles, of course, use Mobi, and I noted earlier that you could use something called deliverables, so you might want to check that out. It's a free open source tool, and it's a really quick way to convert to Mobi. And some common e-readers, of course, are Kindles, Nooks. There's all kinds of apps for tablets and phones. Like on the Android, you could use Aldico, I believe it. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I think that's it. So there's a lot of, in addition to particular devices that you could read EPUBs on, you can also read them via an app on a different device. I have a few books loaded onto my what do I have? I'm forgetting my phone's an Android, but I'm forgetting the name of it. There are so many. Now, the W3C does control the specs for cascading style sheets, and the interesting thing is, oh, my phone's the Motorola Razr. There, just came to me. Okay, so the W3C controls those specs, and CSSs were not designed for EPUBs. They were designed for the web. So there are some things that CSSs don't control in EPUB quite the way that folks would like it to. So that's part of the reason that sometimes you see a little bit of a disconnect between what the cascading style sheet might say and what it displays in an EPUB. So a little background on that. Now, your doc options for EPUB. Now, these are some specific use cases. Of course, there are many other, scenarios where EPUB might be a good choice for you, but for documentation, repair instructions for technicians in the field, great option for those folks. Reference manuals for those who need quick access and less paper. There's one airline that has switched all the pilots, instead of carrying those huge manuals, they're carrying iPads, I believe. So. And some folks are carrying different e-readers. So doctors, pilots, people like that who have been lugging heavy things around. Policies and procedures manuals for your company might be great in EPUB. And installation instructions for software or hardware that's installed in factories, hospitals, or other remote locations. I have worked on documentation like that where it was hardware that had to be installed in hospitals, and those folks always had to carry around the manual to do that installation because the instructions were very, very specific about what bolts to use and what you could drill into, and there were a lot of issues around it, so they did need to follow the directions, and being able to read that in EPUB would probably be a lot easier for them, so they wouldn't have to carry the manual around. And obviously it would be quicker to download a new version so that they always have the latest information. Now, some general EPUB best practices. Keeping your style simple. Deep indenting of bullets and numbering will look good. I guess I would say it displays non-optimally. It just indents too much. This applies to mobile also. Not every device will read every font. So specific symbols are a little bit of a problem. So you want to keep an eye on that. Tables are another issue. Linear tables that have a lot of columns, there's really no rule about how many columns because the devices vary so much. They could be an issue. They'll split across pages. They might have a different background color than the rest of the text. So they could be a little bit of an issue, but I think this problem will be solved in the future, but for now you want to take a close look at your tables. Users could, of course, manipulate the view on EPUB readers. You can change how big the font size is and how you want it to display, which is a good thing, but you can't control what the end users are seeing, which, is pretty familiar. We're familiar from that with web outputs. We can't control the way people display them. They could jack up the size of the font and, have different monitors and all sorts of things. Now, watching the size of graphics, we're going to talk about video and graphics in a little bit. You're going to want to probably link to videos. Now, let's talk a little bit about EPUB features. Doc2Help has a few of them, and I'd like to just tell you about them really quickly. First of all, Doc2Help supports EPUB 3, as well as, which is the newest version from the spec, as well as 2.0.1. EPUB 3 added support for HTML5, SVG, MathML, and it uses XHTML5. But the one issue with it is not all tablets support EPUB 3 yet, but they probably will soon. Your content can be authored in Word or the built-in content editor, so you could use either one or both. And you can mix document types in Doc2Help and create EPUB. Now, it's easy to add specific properties. The spec for EPUB says you have to include the title, author, the identifier, which is a number, the publisher, the date, all those things. It's easy to add those properties via a dialog box. Of course, you can convert the EPUB format. And there's some other standard features that make customization easy. So we won't go over all of those now because it is time to dive into the promised tips and best practices. Let me look at our questions really quick. Okay, yes, I will answer these when we're doing our exercises. So I will get to the questions that I'm seeing so far. So let's take a look at, we're going to start doing our exercises now, and we're going to start looking at a lot of different tips and best practices and how you can implement them within Doc2Help. Now, first of all, adapting your TOC. Now, I talked earlier about the fact that for mobile, you want to have a shallower table of contents. 2 levels is about right so that folks don't have to keep tapping to get further along in your table of contents and eventually lose their way. Shorter entries, length of the table of contents entries is nice, so they have a better chance of fitting on the screen. Of course, you never know what screen folks are looking at, so you can't do it precisely, but some folks have entries in their tables of contents that are quite long, so you want to try to avoid that. Doc2Help has a feature called Target-Specific Table of Contents. So it's easy to create a specific TOC for your mobile output and then leave your TOC the same for all your other outputs. So it takes care of that issue. And I'm actually going to, there's a short video that I'm going to jump to. This is Brad Keller here at Component 1. And right before we do the exercise, let's watch his video really quickly.
Hi, I'm Brad Keller, Product Consultant for Doc2Help. As part of our ongoing Doc2Help training video series, today I'm going to talk about customizing your table of contents for different outputs. This is a powerful single sourcing feature that allows you to deliver unique content for different users in the output they need. By default, Doc2Help creates a table of contents based on the heading styles applied in your source files. But you can easily customize the TOC that customers see by using the Contents pane. To customize the TOC, you have several options. You can drag and drop topics from the Topics window to add them to the TOC, drag and drop topics or books in the Contents pane, or use the blue arrows to move books or topics up and down or in and out of the hierarchy. You can also add new books or delete existing books or topics. Say you want to have an FAQ page for NetHelp, your web-based output, and a smaller, simpler TOC for your mobile output. Let's start with your NetHelp. Select the NetHelp target from the drop-down and go to the Contents pane. Click the Create Book button and name your book FAQs. Once you add the book, the contents are flagged as customized. From there, you can drag and drop topics into the FAQs book to associate them with that book. Once you have your TOC where you want it, click the Target Specific Table of Contents button. Now, every time you build NetHelp, the FAQ page will appear at the top of the TOC. To customize our mobile TOC, we just need to select the mobile output from the list and start making changes in the Contents pane. We want to keep the FAQs page, but to make the TOC simpler, we'll delete everything but the FAQs, Welcome, Benefits, and Office and Administrative Procedures books. The best part about this feature is that it doesn't touch your source content. Everything in your documents is in the same place and hasn't been moved around. This feature just changes the way that Doc2Help presents the content, which makes it easy to customize for different audiences viewing different outputs. Go to doc2help.com to download a free trial of the software and check it out for yourself. I'm Brad Keller. Thanks for watching, and thanks for choosing Component 1.
Okay, So now we have went through a quick overview of TOCs with Brad. And the exercise we're going to do, the first exercise is creating a custom table of contents. And the way I like to do exercises is I like to do them first, and then I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do them, and we can go from there. And you could, I'll keep my eye on the questions pane during that 5 minutes to see if anyone has any questions. But other than that, we'll approach it that way. Now I'm going to hop on over to DocToHelp. I have it open, but I don't have a project open. So what we're going to do in this exercise is create a 2-level TOC that will be used only for our mobile outputs, and we'll also shorten one of our table of contents, one of the names of one of our topics, just so you can see how that's done, and that'll better support mobile devices. Now, we're going to, as I said earlier, we're going to use one of our sample projects to do this. So I'm going to open one of our sample projects and start there. I'm going to use the Getting Started wizard, which you can open using this icon in the upper right. You could also just click Open Project or go to File, Open Project, but I'm just going to show you the Getting Started wizard. So you start there and choose Open a Sample Project. Click Next. And all of the sample projects that are included with DocToHelp are displayed. So we're going to use Employee Handbook. And so we just double-click there and open the .d2h file. You could also, if you're in Windows Explorer, just double-click on the .d2h file to open the project. So this is a pretty simple project. It just contains 2 documents, the main document and the glossary. But your project can include many, many Word documents, and you could also mix Word and HTML in the same project, so that's not a problem at all. If you like to use a lot of documents or you just have a lot of documents, you can do it whichever way you want. DocToHelp's very flexible. Now, let's click the Contents button to look at our table of contents. And this is what it looks like by default. DocToHelp created this based on heading styles. If we expand it, we can see that it pretty much goes 4 levels. So that is a lot of levels for mobile. The reason I chose the Employee Handbook sample for these exercises is this is something that could logically be something your company wants to deliver as a manual at your company, on the website, which you could output NetHelp for that, and they might want to deliver a mobile version, and so you could also deliver that all from one project. So what we're going to do is, I already clicked the Expand All button so we can see the whole TOC. We're going to actually choose the mobile target. That's already chosen, Employee Handbook Mobile Help. And we're going to make it we're going to first customize it and make it 2 levels, and then we're going to make it target specific. So I started in the workbook on page, just to let you know where you should be when you do the exercise, page 16 of the workbook. So that's where I started. So we've expanded. Now we're just going to start from the bottom and make this a 2-level TOC just by very quickly choosing the topics and using our little move button. So this doesn't take very long at all. Go through these, move them in. We just basically want to get it down to 2 levels. So anything that's sitting out at the 3rd or 4th level, we're going to move it in. It's always easier to do it from the bottom up, because then you have a better sense of where you are. too much else to change. That's okay. There we go. Sorry, I know this part isn't too exciting. This is the exercise with the most little changes to make in it. So, but I really wanted you guys to see this. So let's see, almost done. Very, very close. We're gonna, let's see, that's fine. And I think we've got everything. I've got a few extra guys here, but we're just going to go with it so we could move forward. Now you can see Dr. Help is showing that this is customized, and I'm going to click the Target Specific Table of Contents button. And Dr. Help asked me, do I want to create a custom table of contents for mobile help? Yes. So this is going to be only for mobile help. If I go over to HTML help, we still have our original TOC. So let's hop back over to mobile. And let's do a build of our mobile output. This shouldn't take too long. And then we have a quick bonus exercise that we will do, and then I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to do the exercise yourself. I hope you all printed out the workbook. It's a little bit easier to do exercises that way, but I can understand if you didn't. Okay, now Dr. Help automatically asks, would you like to view it? And yes, we would. It's going to open up in our browser. Now, of course, in a mobile device, you won't see all the browser stuff around there. You'll just see this information in the middle. So we have a 2-level TOC. So our table of contents is customized for mobile. Now, one thing you'll notice, our heading says Employee Handbook. And that's our bonus exercise. We probably want the caption to say Employee Guide or something like that. So where we would change that is right here in the Help Targets dialog box. For our mobile help, the caption right now says Employee Handbook. You can change the caption on all of your outputs just right here in the Help Targets dialog box in the caption field. So we're going to say OK. And we will be building this again a little bit later. I mean, I could build it while you guys are doing the exercise yourself. But when we rebuild it, it'll say Employee Guide on the top instead of Employee Handbook, because in a mobile context, handbook doesn't make sense. So why don't you guys all jump over to page 16. And I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes to do this exercise, and then we will jump to the next topic. So go ahead and get started, and I'll keep my eye out for questions. Okay, there are a few questions, and I'll answer them while you're all working on this. I just built my mobile output, and I want to show you the, I didn't want it to be that big. And I want to show you that the heading now says Employee Guide, so it keeps expanding. Okay, some of the questions. What if the TOC doesn't show automatically after importing a document? If you start a new project and you import documents, you do need to do a build before Doc2Help will display the TOC. So that is what you need to do there. So just hit the build button, and then Doc2Help will build your TOC based on the heading style. There's a question, can the title, the caption in Mobile Help, be configured to include a graphic like a small product logo? That is a good question. I'm not sure. I could check on that. So I will check on that, and I see your name. Let me write it down, and I will get back to you with that. So you can definitely do that in NetHelp, so I just need to check on Mobile Help. Okay. If I customize my table of contents and then update my Word document with new headings, will I lose my changes? Actually, what will happen is Doc2Help will ask you when the next time you do a rebuild, it'll say there are X number of new topics. Do you want to add them to your TOC? So it will not change what you did without asking you. So it'll first ask you, and then it will give you the opportunity to add those additional topics if you want to. So, so that is covered, which is really handy. Okay, there's a question about NetHelp. Let's see, just checking the time. Okay, I have a couple of more questions to answer, but I will jump back to those in a minute and answer them at the end. So let's go back to our slides. Okay, so we talked about our table of contents. Okay, managing indexes. Now, you may have noticed our mobile version we just built contains an index, just like our browser-based help and our manual. They're less useful in mobile outputs because of fat fingers and because people prefer to search in mobile outputs. So we're actually going to do a quick exercise with the theme designer to learn how to customize the theme and get rid of the index. You can see this version has one and this version does not. So that's really easy to do. Now that exercise is on page 23 of your workbook. So I'm going to open Doc2Help and go there. So now, as I said, in this exercise, we're going to hide the index so it won't be displayed in our mobile target. I will mention, I think we have this here. Yes. If you look at this one, you can see the index is there. Now, this particular, if your project has no index entries, Doc2Help will not display the index by default. So if you don't have any index entries, you don't need to do anything. But if you have an index, like this project has 135 keywords, then you're going to want to hide it. But what's great about this is you could hide it in mobile, but in your manual and your NetHelp and all the other places you might still want it to be, it can remain. So we're going to close those tabs. So let's take a look at that. What you do is, and I'm on page 17, is you actually do this in our theme designer. So you open the theme designer, and you can see this is the default look for our for our mobile output, we're going to add a new theme and we'll call it basic no index because we're going to take the index out. And this dialog box will open, and what we need to do is go to where there are buttons, index, and you can see there's a field called visible. So that's what turns it on and off. By default, it's on. So we're going to clear that checkbox and say OK. And our theme designer will actually update, and we'll see there's no index up here. So we'll say OK, and then we will make sure for mobile that this theme is selected. Basic no index, yes. And we'll do a build. So far, no sneezing. I shouldn't risk saying that, but I did. Pretty happy that I haven't been sneezing. Okay, so let's take a look. And we can see that the index is gone. If we go to use the search, that expands. And we can search on a term, just travel. And it finds 3 topics, and we can jump right to those, and it highlights them for us, which is pretty handy. So there, our index is gone. Now, if you switch over to our NetHelp output, we can do a build really quickly, and you will see that the index will still be there. So it's just a little quick proof of concept there that I wanted to show you. We haven't built NetHelp yet, so I think it's nice to take a look at it. So yes, let's view our NetHelp, which will open in a browser also. So there it is. The index is here, 135 keywords. And so the mobile and the NetHelp are different. So one has the index displayed and one does not. So let me hop back on over to our slide. Now we talked about indexes, so I'm hopping back to the slides, but you guys need to do the exercise, which begins on page 23. So let me give you 5 minutes for that. Writing down the time we're starting. And I will give you 5 minutes to do the exercise, and then we're going to talk about, we're not going to do an exercise for a few minutes, and talk about graphics and video and things like that. So page 23. There's a question about, is DocToHelp supported in Windows 8? Yes, it is. DocToHelp 2013 version 1, which is the download link you have, supports Windows 8, so you're fine there. There was another question about the logo. Yes, in NetHelp it's very easy to add the logo, and I think there's actually a blog post about that, about how to add a logo to customize your NetHelp. So there's a lot of information about that. Let me look at other questions while I have a second. Okay, there's a question about SharePoint. Is there a way to define a SharePoint library as the location for the DocToHelp project right off the bat? When you do there's different directions you could go in with SharePoint. You could pull documents out of SharePoint into a DocToHelp project, and the Getting Started wizard will let you choose documents that way. Now, when you want to export to a SharePoint library, there is a different wizard that lets you export. So you can set things up pretty quickly that way. And let's see. For a few different questions here, I will write down your name and email you about this because I think these questions are, I have questions for you, and that would be, it would be too hard to handle that right now. So I will, the SharePoint questions I will email you, and also the question about NetHelp that I have. So I think that's everything I have. I think I'm all caught up. Yeah, all caught up on questions. So great. Okay, so you have done that exercise. So now we're going to talk for a second about graphics and video. There's no exercise to this one. I just want to give you some tips and tricks for graphics and video. First of all, the main two issues with images in mobile are load time and how they adapt for display, because the devices vary so widely. Now, the best format for images is JPEG for photos and PNG for everything else, although TIFF is okay too. And although the images adapt for each device, you're going to want to probably keep the image size at 1,000 by 1,000 pixels or less. That seems to work best. And always, these are just best practices that I found out about. Start with high quality images so they don't become too pixelated. 300 DPI or more is good. 72 is probably your minimum. Images make, of course, your EPUB file size bigger, so you might want to compress them before you convert to save space. And for Kindles, the maximum, now this is talking about bookstore things. If you want to put things in the Kindle bookstore, the maximum acceptable Kindle file size is 50 megabytes. The Apple iBook Store is 2. So, of course, if you sideload a file, the only limit is the space on your device. But those limits are for the stores. You could create separate images for each output and swap them using conditions. So you could use a very large file size, like say in your NetHelp, because it's served on your web server, you don't care. We're going to talk about conditions in a minute, but you can actually use conditions to swap images or anything. And instead of embedding videos, you should just link to YouTube or some other site. You won't have to worry about embedding them and having several different formats and sizes available, because that's what you would need to do if you embedded them, because you don't know what device folks have. The users will need to have Wi-Fi, but the file size of your EPUB will be smaller too. So those are all good things. Now, related topics. This is something that I think works really well on mobile devices, and really for anything, because I think navigation is really important in user assistance. So in mobile, you don't want users to have to hit the back button constantly, especially because the back button varies on different mobile devices, and you don't know where it's going to take the user. So you want to keep them in your output. So one thing that DocToHelp does automatically, which is on this slide, is create something we call related links. And any topic that has a subtopic will automatically, so this is the heading 1, we talked about this first topic before. These are all the heading 2s under it. DocToHelp created these related links for you automatically based on the heading styles. So that is done. Now, you could add more manually by a drag and drop, which is what we're going to do in our exercise. You could change the icons. You could customize this a little bit. This is the default icon, these little arrows. You could change this text. You could have it say additional information, whatever you like. So that is very customizable. And an added bonus, as I said, this is a good best practice for projects that are not mobile. So it could be NetHelp, it could be HTML help, it's all good. So as I said, Dr. Help does this automatically based on heading styles. And in our next exercise, I'm going to show you how to create custom related links and why you'd want to do that. So let me hop on over to Dr. Help again. And exercise 3, there are 5 altogether that we're doing on page 33 of your workbook. And we're going to improve the navigation of our online output using the Related Topics pane down here in the bottom. So we click on that, and we can actually see what Dr. Help did automatically. So if we look at our welcome topic, we can see that the heading 2s underneath it were about this handbook, company background, company communication. So those are the automatic links, and the little thunderbolt there indicates that they were automatic. Now, one thing that is good is to actually link those child topics back to the parent. That way, if someone using your mobile help wants to go, or any output, wants to go back to where they started originally, or just even if they started at the About This Help handbook topic, they may want to go backwards and see the additional information of the parent topic. So all you need to do is do this with drag and drop. Now earlier I talked about the topics pane, so here we are. I'm going to hide those deleted topics. So we want to link About This handbook and its other topics back to the parent. So we'll just drag welcome down here. And now About This handbook is related back to its parent topic, welcome. So same thing here. And whoops. And we're going to link the last one, company communications, to the welcome topic. So now we're going to direct users back there. So I'm going to build our net help in this case, and we're going to see our automatic links. So these will appear in all of the outputs. So we're building net help in this case, but it will appear in mobile and everything else. So let's take a look at this. So here's our welcome topic. These were the automatic links. Let me show you right here. And here are the ones we created. So if we go to About This handbook, whoops, they aren't there. I think I need to do a rebuild. A rebuild basically clears out all of the build information and starts from scratch. And often when you make changes like adding index entries and things like that, you want to do a rebuild so that it begins from basically the beginning of the process. But the nice thing about the build button is when you're just making edits and things like that, Dr. Help retains the history of the build, and then when you just make some edits and you hit build, it goes much quicker because it doesn't have to start from scratch. So here's a quick lesson in the difference between build and rebuild. So, okay, here we go. So About This handbook, and there it is, welcome. So that'll take us back to the parent. Company background and overview, same thing. So this is a great feature for improving navigation inside your help. And you could also do things like, there are these automatic topics here. You could take any topic from the topics pane and say, you know what, when someone's being welcomed, I really want to tell them about the work, just lead them to working hours. Just drag that over. So that's a custom related link. And so it's just a great way to link things together and improve navigation. Now that exercise is on page 33. So I'm going to give you, 3 or 4 minutes for that one because that's a pretty quick one. So go ahead and do the exercise, and while you're doing the exercise, I'll keep an eye out for questions, and I think I also see a few there, so let me look at those. Let me display our output. Okay, there was a question about messages that you receive when building. Try hitting the rebuild button and see if that will fix that. There's a question, is there an automatic link back to parent feature? No, there's not. Doc2Help automatically links to the children, but since it is variable how you might want children to link to other things, there's not an automatic feature there. Okay, there's a question about, someone's asking, I have a project with output to NetHelp and a manual, source content is XML. I've been playing with using both a target CSS and a target template to get the manual the way I expect it to look. Okay, when you are converting to a manual, in this case, even though your source content is XML, the only thing you need to edit is the target template. So that's the answer there. So all the changes need to be made in the target template. The links being sometimes coming across as hyperlinks and not automatic cross-references. You can do that, so that's not a problem. I will email you the answer there. It's just a setting in Doc2Help. There's a question, can you change the order of the custom-related topics and how they are sorted? No, I believe they all appear automatically. There's some method to the way they always appear automatically, so you automatically in alphabetical order. So let's see, those are all those questions, so I'm going to move forward. We've talked about graphics and videos, we've talked about the links. Let's talk for a minute about Section 508. So Section 508 compliance is important, and Doc2Help can handle this. This is a compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in Doc2Help, there is an accessibility mode. You turn that on in the Help Targets dialog box. You choose Section 508 as the accessibility mode. Then you have to do your part, so you turn that on. Then for your graphics and video, there are dialog boxes when you insert those, and there is an alternative text field, and that's for the screen readers to read. So you need to add that alternative text. If you don't, screen readers won't have anything to read. So once you do that, and also add table captions for tables, then when you do a build, your help will be Section 508 compliant. And there is a blog post on that you can read to learn more about that. Now, managing content. This is something that, we talked earlier about being concise. It's not only about the small screen, it's also about the mobile persona. The users are only using one hand. They don't want to scroll and tap too much. Some people call this minimalism, but being concise is not really Nuremberg funnel minimalism, but it's a byproduct of that style. So, because minimalism strives to get learners started on meaningful tasks quickly and reduce the amount of reading. I mean, that's good for everything. So, if your content hasn't had a good copy edit in a while, might be something worth doing, because concise content is better in every output. But some topics, even specific text, are not necessarily needed for mobile. So you can hide this information using conditions in Doc2Help. So that's our next exercise, and it's on page 45. So I'm going to hop over there to page 45 of our workbook. And what we do in this one, let me go over to Doc2Help, is there are actually some topics in this project that have conditions applied to them already, and the reason is they are not, they're not ideal, they're not needed in mobile or web outputs. They're only needed in the manual because they are sign-off sheets. So the sign-off sheets that people need to return to the HR department. So we're actually going to open up our employee handbook doc, and we'll just do a quick find and go to the topic named Drug-Free Workplace Policy, and we already, let's see, jump to the right one. Okay, this is the one near the end. So I just use Word's find feature there. So you'll see that this information is highlighted in sort of a purpley pink, and that's because it's already been marked with a condition. And when we hover over it, Dr. Help will display what the condition is: C1H manual. So if we scroll down through this, now this is applied with. I'll show you how we apply this, but I just want to show it to you that we get to the very end of this section, and as I said, these are all sign-off sheets that HR needs, so they are completely not useful in mobile or NetHelp or any other online outputs. So if we look here, here's a comment at the end. So that also shows that this is a C1H manual, so this is only for manuals. And to clear the condition, you could simply delete the comment, or you can go to Dr. Help's toolbar and say clear formatting. So now that condition is not applied anymore, but I just want to show you how to apply it really quickly. We're going to reapply. Click the conditional text button, and we will choose the platform, which is just the type of output. This is only for printed manual. Choose that box, say OK, and now this is all flagged for the manual. So that's how easy it is to apply a condition. So we cleared the condition, we applied it, and now we're actually going to save this document. And Dr. Help will always remind you to save if you forget to. Do a build. Now we're going to do, we're going to build our NetHelp because we want to show that this section will not be appearing. So once again, when you do this exercise, you can ask questions. Okay, so let's take a look at it. So those topics down here under right before the glossary, so you look at business travel, those are the last topics, not the topic about the sign-off sheets and such. But if we build the manual, and we haven't built a manual yet, so this is a good time to do it, and that is actually your bonus exercise, choosing the manual and building it. I see some questions. I will jump to those in a second. Okay. So we're just going to look at the table of contents, not scroll through the whole manual, because that section's at the very end. This project has a pretty long table of contents. I have to say there's a lot of stuff in here. So right after business travel, you can see that the sign-off sheet there for those various policies and acknowledgement of receipt of the handbook are all there. So that is appearing in our print manual. So that's sort of a really, the conditions are very powerful. You can apply them to just content like we did, just text, and you can also apply them to graphics, which is why I mentioned you could use them to swap images. Like you could have an image tag that's printed manual and an image tag that's online help and have completely different images. You could also tag an entire document. You could right-click on it, Properties, and choose the condition, and there are several types of conditions. And you can also apply it by topic. You can right-click on a topic and choose Properties and apply it by topic. So there are several ways to apply conditions. You just need to look at it and see what is the best way for your project. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to do that exercise. It starts on page, let me flip back here, page 45 of your workbook. So go ahead and do that, and while you're doing that, I'm going to answer questions. Okay. Someone asked about using the build button. Is it necessary to use build over rebuild when switching between targets? When you switch between targets, you don't necessarily have to use rebuild. You could just use build. As I said, the main reason to use rebuild is if you do something major, if you add index entries, obviously if you add related topics, as I showed you. There are a few things, I have them in the documentation that are a good places to do rebuilds, just so that Doc2Help starts from scratch. But usually a build is fine. A good rule of thumb is if you make a change, such as I did, like you added a topic and you don't see them, just do a rebuild. So, you know, sometimes you just forget when you need to do a rebuild. And let's see. Yes, and there's a question about a net help. When you're clicking on an index item, you get a small pop-up with two options. Yes, in the index, if something, if you use the same keyword in two different topics, which people often do, like say, you know, benefits in the case of this book, you might have the benefits index item attached to a topic about insurance, and then there might be one about vacation. So what our NetHelp does is, and Mobile does a version of this, and as do Chums, it will show all the topics, and then in a little pop-up, and then you choose one, and then you can go to the right topic. Yes, there is a, and also the other question is C1 pop-up HTM. That is its style, basically. And so yeah, so that answers that question. Thank you for those. That is a very good point about the way indexes work. So what that, in a print manual, they just all appear. So under benefits, it would say vacation, here's the page number, insurance, here's the page number, but they are pop-ups in the online output. So that is all those questions. So I'm caught up. Let me see what time it is. Trying to give you 5 minutes for each exercise. I think that is best because you could always go back and work on them later, but I think the exercises are short enough to get them all done in that amount of time. So the last subject we're going to talk about is terminology management, and then have a few wrap-up items. Okay, so jumping back over to our slides, a little bit about managing terminology. So you can use variables. What the feature that we call variables to swap desktop and mobile terminology. So Luke Robileski and some of his colleagues did a touch-based user interfaces guide, which I have a link to here. That would be tap versus click. Click on a desktop, tap on a mobile device. You can actually swap terminology like that, and I'm going to show you how using Doc2Help variables. And I have links here to the documentation on variables and also a blog post about them. But the interesting thing is, in my exercise, we're actually going to use it because there's a difference between terminology in our employee handbook. So it doesn't always have to be a swap between desktop and mobile. It could be a swap for another reason. So let me hop back over to our project. And I did want to mention that the workbook actually has, what you probably noticed, it has a lot of conceptual and instructional information in it. We're only using the exercises in this webcast, but there is a lot of other information in there that you should find useful. Now, the variables exercise is on page 52, and we will go through that. Now, variables have a lot of uses. They can make it easy to reuse content and also to update all that reused content. I use variables all the time because they're, for example, one of the projects I have, some of the fields are used in different dialog boxes. So instead of putting that same information in 4 places in the online help, I create one variable, insert it everywhere. Then if I need to update it, I don't need to search and try to find all the places that it appeared. I update the variable, do a build, done. So that's really cool. So if we look in this project, go to the Project tab in Doc2Help and click on Variables, we can see what variables are already in this project. And Doc2Help has 2 different kinds of variables. One kind is rich content, and these are variables that will actually include formatting. So you could put tables in there. You can format any kind of content. You can put graphics in there. It's content you want to control what it looks like. In text variables, however, just take on the formatting of what is around them. So those can be inserted anywhere and just seamlessly go into the content. And they will take on the formatting of everything around them. Now, of course, you saw I had a link in the slides that will take you to more information about variables. But that's just a really quick overview of the way they work. So what we're going to do in this exercise is actually create one text variable that has conditions so that in online output, it will, one word will display, and in the manual, a different word will display. So this is very appropriate exercise. So we're going to actually make a conditional variable. So the way we do this is we say add new variable, and we're going to name it in this case format. You can name it anything you want. It's just a placeholder, but since we're flipping between different outputs, we're just going to use that. So the text, in this case, I'm going to say handbook, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a variable that changes based on whether you're building a book or whether you're building online help. So handbook, and then we're going to choose a condition, and we're going to say printed manual. So choose that one. So there it is. There, the platform is manual. So now we want to make one that's for online help. So we say add text with condition, and Doc2Help is automatically going to just repeat that, name it handbook. We're going to rename that. We'll rename it guide, because in online help we would prefer that it say guide, because handbook doesn't make sense. And in mobile outputs it wouldn't make sense. And we're going to give it the platform of online help. So there we go. It's online. Now this one just flipped on me because I'm doing a demo. So it's just being a little reset. Printed manual. Yes. So there we go. So the platform is manual. for handbook. The platform is online for guide. So there, we've created a text variable that will vary based on a condition, based on what you're building. Now, you could do a lot of different things with conditions. This is just a really quick overview. So let us go. Now we need to actually insert the variable. So part one is making one, part two is inserting it. Now we're going to do a quick find on the word in Word handbook. So we're only going to change it in a few places because we don't have the time to change it everywhere now, but we're just going to change it in 4 places. So we're going to click on this word handbook and use our Doc to Help ribbon again and click the variables button. And we're going to pick our format variable that we created. Okay, and now I have hidden text turned on, so you're seeing the exact code when the variable's inserted. If you turn hidden text off in Word, you won't see it. So if you don't like that, you don't have to look at it. Format. Now, of course, this text that I'm selecting, handbook, that's not going to remain. That's a placeholder. Like that could say foo or anything else. That's just what we are selecting. So let's see. And let's select handbook here. And this happens to say handbooks. So we're going to insert the variable there. Say OK. And so we're just changing it in 3 places, just as a quick demo. Save it. And close this project. Now let's build a book first. Other handy single sourcing features I wanted to mention really quickly so that we could finish up is, okay, improving net help and mobile help. Doc to Help has a feature called collapsible text. When you build the mobile help, it will look like this. It looks a little bit different in net help. And in manuals, it just displays all of the text. But this makes long lists more usable. And it also uses progressive information disclosure, which is really, really cool. That is something that, you want to give people, you want people to find what they want to look for and then just, progressively display the information. So that is really, really handy. And collapsible text makes this possible, so I recommend you trying this out in your NetHelp and mobile outputs. Also, another easy enhancement, if you look right here, are these buttons. In Doc to Help, you could actually use the dialog box and make links into buttons. You could just choose a checkbox, and a link will be a button, and that is really nice for fat fingering in a mobile output, and it's really, really easy. So I would recommend trying that. This is a feature that really has existed in Doc to Help forever. It has nothing, it was not designed for mobile, but I find that it works really well in mobile. And let me turn my highlighter off here. So this is the checkbox, the Show As Button checkbox right there in the link dialog box. Now, dynamic content does adjust in EPUB. So I just wanted to point this out that Doc to Help has, this is in the documentation, has a bunch of features to support this kind of dynamic content, these pop-ups and these collapsible sections, all of these things. So if you use those in your project, DocToHelp has ways to handle that kind of content in EPUB, so you don't need to worry about it. Now, to wrap up, here is a list of further reading that you may find interesting. There are blog posts about mobile health best practices, Joe Walensky's book on user assistance for mobile apps, and then I have a couple of presentations I did that have a lot of, a lot more detailed information about mobile content and best practices. So that's all available. And we can take some questions. And I truly appreciate all of you attending today. I appreciate it. Ask me, send me an email, NickyB@component1.com with any questions or any comments. And feel free to do that anytime. Follow DocToHelp on Twitter. That would be great. And thank everyone for their kind attention.